Okay, well, welcome to the second workshop. Before I get into it, quick review of everything I talked about last time, just so I make sure we're on the same page and so you guys remember in case. Basically, the key points is first of all, there's just like an unbelievably massive range of climate roles. It's a ridiculously funny label that is described as an industry, even though it in no way is. And then for the job search in general, like I just said to Lucas, it absolutely sucks. It just takes a real lot of time and effort. And compared to like everything we're used to from school requires very different, ways to self-motivate. You don't get the same sort of feedback and satisfaction that you normally would from like the school. All of those sort of like feedback and motivational loops that come from, being in an environment with a bunch of other students. And so because of that, you sort of have to find that motivation yourself and sort of, create different structures for rewarding yourself for putting in good effort, for celebrating yourself, for holding yourself accountable for actually putting in as much effort and time as you should. It's very, very different because of that. And so it can be a challenge for people at first. Again, like I said before, in general, like the hardest part of this is finding roles and not necessarily just in the like actually finding where those jobs are publicly. But also at the same time, like in finding roles is really challenging in actually figuring out, okay, what roles do I actually want? And the whole idea of like finding your niche that we talked about last time is like that is genuinely a really, really, really challenging thing to do because it takes a lot of like self-reflection and being like, yeah, what stuff am I actually interested in? What stuff am I actually passionate about? What stuff am I actually really good at? Um, so like that's those are difficult things to do. I'm not expecting you guys to have any of those answers, and it's okay because at the same time, it's also like a dynamic process of finding out what that is, and you're gonna figure that out. Hopefully, if you figure that out in 10 years in your life and you know exactly what things you want, you're gonna spend your life doing, as like a whatever year old in 10 years, like you're way ahead of most people, right? And so like this generally just takes a lot of time, and it's okay to have a guess, but it's important that to make a guess and focus on some niches because you can be a lot more successful in the process because of that. And then we use sort of this framework for talking about that, like narrowing down your niche by, the type of organization from like a 4-person technology startup to working for a government agency or a massive company and like one of their sustainability initiatives. Then sort of on role type, so job function. What are you actually going to be doing from a day-to-day basis? What are the stuff that you really enjoy doing day to day? And then which sort of verticals or niches are you most interested in? Are you obsessed with, carbon capture companies or working in the energy industry, or see which of those verticals and specific things the company is doing, the specific way of what they're doing relates to climate change and fighting climate change, which are those you naturally are most curious and passionate about. So this is sort of the framework that I hope you guys have come up with, some sense of what it is you're looking for there. Yeah. Okay. I'll skip this for now. And I don't need to go into an agenda. You'll see. First, this is, I think, one of the most important things I want to talk about today is that in general, this is what I've seen when applying to jobs myself, when, interviewing applicants myself, when I was hiring for roles at startups. But in general, like when people are applying for jobs, just think of this as sort of the distribution of people who are applying for a single role. Say there's, 100 people who applied. On average, the majority of applicants will put in whatever the bare minimum effort is, whether that's a resume, there's an optional cover letter, and that's it. The majority of people will just submit a resume. And then there'll be another 30% of people that'll go through the effort of writing a cover letter, then another, 5 to 6 people who actually will go through the effort to do anything more than just submitting a resume and cover letter. And I'll get into what some examples of ways are that you can do that, because I'm sure for most people, like you're like, oh, resume, what else could I possibly send them? That seems like the majority of it, which is totally fair. So I'll go into that later, but in general, I think like the majority of people will put that like very minimum effort into applying for any job. And for a lot of jobs, especially in climate, where these jobs will get over 100 applicants, for a lot of these roles, like people will immediately toss out 60% of those applicants and never even look at them. And if you put in the bare minimum effort, that is a immediate thing that you will likely get your application tossed out because there's going to be some people. Now, again, like you see this, I think it's the minority. It might be 20% of people who will do anything above and beyond. But those 20% of people automatically have such a big leg up, right? So this is the way to think about it. And in general, the sort of high level takeaway is pretty is as simple as like quality over quantity. Like if you can submit 100 applications. If you're putting in on average low effort compared to most people, for those things, you're still have a really low chance of getting anything. as opposed to submitting, 25 really high quality applications. Like you're going to really stand out in every single one of those applications because you're going to be on the far end of the spectrum in terms of effort when the majority of people always aren't, right? This is just people generally are going to take the easiest approach. So that's sort of like the most important takeaway I'll say. And we're going to go into now, okay, how can you go from this, like, what are the things you can do to go from like the lowest effort level, the easy things to make yourself get to like a medium level, or the things you can go really above and beyond for the jobs that you really, really want to get all the way to sort of this like high energy level or not energy, effort level. Okay. Does that make sense? Any questions about anything there?
What's like the highest effort that you could possibly do?
I'll get to that.
Oh,
We'll see.
yeah.
Yeah. It's a good question. Okay. First, quick note on job boards. Same exact principle I just talked about when talking about like one specific job and the distribution of people applying. It's the exact same thing with finding a bunch of jobs. The harder you have to look to find a job, the harder it was for everyone else. And by far, the less people found it, like exponentially less people ended up finding it. If you find your job by looking up climate on LinkedIn in the first 2 pages, like that was the jobs that everyone will apply to. And those are going to have genuinely 10 times more applicants than a job that you had to go out of your way to find. So this principle is the same. Like you're able to find job postings in niche places, or better yet, next week we'll talk about the hidden job market, and those are jobs that are never posted at all. You have a much better chance because you're competing on a less people, and the fact that you even found it shows a lot of effort and specific interest in that specific company. Here on the right is like some of our favorite job boards. I sent out on the resources sheet I sent out last week, and I'm sure Lucas can send it if he's able to find it. If not, I can send it. Has a list of a number of these job boards that you guys can use. They're some of our favorites. Climate Tech List is our favorite because it just directly aggregates a bunch of job postings from companies' websites, which means they're not necessarily on a ton of other aggregators, and there's so many jobs there that it's not the same thing if it's there, a ton of people have applied, as opposed to some of these other job boards that are more selective. But again, best place to find a job is like directly posted on those company website. If it's there and nowhere else, like people have to really go out of their way and be interested in that company specifically to find it. And so you're gonna by virtue of doing that, you're gonna stand out. And a lot of jobs in general will be posted on a company's website long before they ever post it publicly on a job board. Okay, next I basically want to talk about quickly about, okay, what are the general different types of ways that companies screen applicants? So you guys sort of have the perspective from the employer, how they're thinking about it, how they're approaching it, and for different sort of stages, how you should approach it to best, fit what they're looking for. So first, like I want to talk about just like how they review applicants, right? So this is the process of going from all the massive people who applied to the people who they actually schedule interviews with, right? Narrowing down all those resumes that were sent to who they actually want to have first interviews with. And in general, there's like three main ways that they do it. Often it can be a combination of these ways. But the first one that every single person on earth hates is automated resume reviews. Unfortunately, the majority of companies now do it a little bit less, I'd say, in climate than other industries, but it has become sort of the standard especially when you're getting like 200 plus applicants, to use sort of some automated system to narrow down to like 50 or so that you actually look at manually. But yeah, this is very, very standard that people will basically put your resume through like a scraper that will then give up like a rough number match for the job on a bunch of things, like your experience level. Is the right number of years of experience? Have you done jobs similar to what they want you to have experience in? Do you mention the right keywords in terms of like soft or technical skills on your resume? So we'll talk about how you can sort of work around this and work to make sure that you do well in these automated resume tracking systems that everyone hates. But most companies do them, so you have to be aware of them. The next thing is sort of a recruiter resume. So this is basically someone whose full-time job is working as a recruiter for a company, and they will basically go over these resumes manually. Usually what happens is they will go over those resumes manually and then send the ones that they like to the hiring manager themselves to review. So they send maybe 10% of the applicants to the hiring manager, who chooses maybe half of those to actually meet with, half of them that they probably aren't, they don't think are a good fit. So yeah, in general with this, like as opposed to the automated resume review where it's all about just like dumping keywords on your resume to make sure your like percent fit score goes up, this is basically just about showing specific interest in the company and relevant skills. It's really about like, I don't know, the core basics, making sure that you demonstrate very, very clearly why you're a fit for the job. The recruiters don't want to look like an idiot by sending someone who's not relevant for some reason to the person. Their job here, they're really about like not looking like an idiot is all they're thinking about here. So just like make it very, very clear. Clarity is, I think, the most important optimizing for recruiters. And then last is like the hiring manager. So the person who actually makes the decision over who they're hiring. Inevitably, they will be reviewing the resumes at the end, probably either after a recruiter looks at them or after automated system looks at them, and being like, here's the ones that I want to interview. And they're like, obviously, there's not much extra you can do beyond the recruiter stuff besides personalize it for them. If you're able to address them directly by name and directly reach out to them or anything like that, you can really, really stand out because you made the effort to do that personally and even made the effort to find who they were. Because often that information isn't public, but like you can easily go through a company's LinkedIn and find the person who would be your boss and would be the person managing your role because they probably have the exact same job title +1, right? Next is like the actual interview process. So there's like 6 main types of interviews. I just want you to sort of have a sense of them. The first one is a recruiter screen. Basically, a recruiter will have like a 15 to 30-minute call with you to basically make sure you meet basic requirements, you actually are interested in the position, and you know something about the company. You are willing to move to wherever that location is, and you're okay with the salary number. It's basically those 4 things, like core basic fit. There's nothing you really need to prepare for besides knowing what the job description is, having actually read it, like have it open at the same time so you can refer to it, and knowing what the company does and making sure you do basic research. They will always screen for these 2 things. Other than that, they don't really care about too much in these interviews. The next one is the hiring manager interview, which is just in general by far the most important one. This is the one where most companies will go from a lot of applicants they're interviewing to very, very few. This is basically the make or break interview, which is basically, this is the person who's going to be deciding it. Obviously, like normal tips to prepare. I'll go through some of those stuff later. But the only other thing is like for this, the most important thing is like showing a bunch of enthusiasm. Like this is the person who's going to decide if they want to work with you. And if you're unenthusiastic, they will not want to work with you every day and manage you for the next like 3 years. Like it's that simple. Just show up with a lot of energy is by far the most important thing in here. The next one is sort of skip level. So this is like your boss's boss will often interview you. It's mostly just to like make sure the hiring manager didn't miss something, make sure there was no glaring red flags. So a lot of people get really scared about these interviews because it's like with someone often a lot higher up. But it's often the opposite approach. These are often a lot more casual and are generally a lot less important. It's just really your idea is just to sort of maintain and like if you've gotten to this point, you're on a really, really good track and like just do the same stuff you've already been doing. There's no reason to overstress or try to do too much for these interviews. In general, they're more or less a formality. Next is teammate interview, which basically mostly means people are going to be trying to look at the culture fit. So it's going to be focused a lot more on that, like seeing, okay, what's your personality like? How do you work with other people? And asking those type of questions. The best thing you can do there is look at their website. What do they claim is their culture? What do they claim that normal stuff is like? And also ask the recruiter and your hiring manager when you have a chance to ask questions in those interviews, ask them like, what's the culture like? What is it actually like day to day? Does it really align with the things you say on your website or is it actually something different? And if you have that information, then you can sort of know a lot better how to prepare for that culture interview and to some extent match what that culture is. It is tough. Like you're almost like acting somewhat, seeing what like someone is like in the interview. And so to some extent, like if you know exactly what they want, it's a lot easier to do that and say that you care about the things that they care about, right? Then technical interview, very simple, is like whatever specific skill sets are important for this job. If you're in an industry where this exists, you will know what this generally looks like. Like it's very, very established stuff for specific fields, what the technical interview looks like. For climate startups specifically, it can be a little bit weirder. It's tough to know. You can just ask the interviews ahead of time, like what is this technical interview going to be made up of? And they'll be pretty honest and tell you most of the time. I will say like sometimes like maybe the first time you won't know what a technical interview looks like. And the best way of figuring it out is just doing one. And like you might fail miserably. And I've definitely had some technical interviews in my life where I failed miserably. And it was like the most valuable learning experience I ever had. Like I knew exactly what skills I needed to work on. I knew what the like quality requirement was. And I was embarrassed enough to like spend the time to actually do it. So it's okay if it happens. Like it happens at least once to pretty much everyone in any specific niche. So yeah. And then lastly is like your on-site, basically just they will at this point most likely only have, I'd say 1 to 3 candidates. A lot of that it's mostly because they want to have backups in case someone says no. but sometimes you'll be the only candidate and they just want to like make sure. In general, I'd say like just do the same things you've already been done. You'll be on a good track. Like they like you for a reason. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. That was a long review of that. Any questions before I go into like specific tips for the application? No? Okay, sweet. Okay, so first high level overview of the steps. First one is very simple, is like updating your resume and your cover letter to match that specific job. Go into a little bit more detail. And then the second thing that most people basically never do, but is the by far easiest, lowest amount of effort way to get from that sort of like low to medium amount of effort is just by sending the hiring manager an email directly. I'll go into a little bit more detail about like what this email should say, but it can be very, very simple. But it's as simple as the fact that you went out of your way to email them personally will make a lot of difference. And often, like since I talked about, usually there'll be either a recruiter or an automated system reviewing these resumes, and then it goes to the hiring manager. You can, if you send them your stuff directly, like it shows a lot of effort, enough that they're probably going to read it and can get you past some of those systems. So even if you might not have passed the screen there, this gives you basically another chance to get past that screen by directly reaching out to the hiring manager. And in the process, you're showing a lot of effort and you're making that person feel special, which is always a good thing. Then we go into like additional effort. This is sort of like the most important thing I want to talk about today. This is the like really above and beyond things you can do to really stand out. And I'll give so many examples about that. And that's, I think, the most important thing, but I'll sort of save the specifics for later. And then lastly, following up. Basically, after applying and not even getting an interview, after getting an interview, send a follow-up a week later. Make sure that you're on the front of the mind. It's like the fact that you're willing to do that. I'd say like when I've hired people, I've hired for like, I think we were hired for like 4 jobs while I was really involved in the process. We had only like 2 people ever do this, and they both, or well, one of them got the job, the other one did not. But you're way more likely to get the job if you follow up, if you show that you're consistently interested in that job. If a week later you still know about that job and are specifically interested, like it makes a big difference. A lot of people will just like are applying for jobs, but if you're willing to do this, it shows that you are very interested specifically in that job. Okay, cool. Okay, first one, I'll be honest. Yo, sorry, Arushi, before I start.
Hey, yeah. Quick question really quickly. So when you're emailing the hiring manager, do you just say like, "Hey, like I applied for this role, like I'm really excited." Is that like basically the gist of what you're saying?
It's like I have like a slide on it in 3 slides. Great question.
Oh, cool. Okay, okay.
Perfect. Okay, resume updating. To be honest, I have never done this in my life for specific jobs. And in the process of making this slide deck, I realized I'm being an absolute idiot and it's really stupid. And it's like would take 3 minutes every time. And I did not realize how stupid these like automated resume screening systems were until I made this specific deck. I sent a link to like a tool here. I think Lucas can send it in the chat. Basically, you can send in your resume and a job description for a specific job, and it will do basically what these automated systems do, and give like a fit score for the job. I did not realize they literally just check if you have really basic keywords. So if you have like a skills line in your job description, you can just add whichever ones are in these job descriptions and you'll get more interviews. It's really stupid. It makes absolutely no sense. Even if you have synonyms, their systems generally will not catch them, which again is dumb. But so just absolutely do it. I will now start doing this in the future. That basically each time there's like 3 main things you should do. Is just update sort of your summary section, maybe like it's like usually like a 2 to 3 sentence section at the top to say why you're specifically interested in that role at that company and why you think you do really well. That part's really, really easy. Just like really 2, 3 sentences about that. Then just change whatever keywords they have and skills, both technical and soft skills they have in the job description. Just literally copy them from job description anywhere onto your document. Again, this may seem really stupid and like, why am I just directly copying and saying I am exactly who they want me to? But if it'll get you through automated screening processes, it helps. And it just shows that you took the effort to read the job description thoroughly, see which specific skills they talk about most, and put that in your resume. And then lastly, matching role titles. So basically this is like, if anything you've done, you can try to change the role title to make it match the experience you want. As long as it's like still actually accurately describing what you did, absolutely okay to like change the name of the role title. Like if you worked in like sales or business development, you're applying for a marketing position, just change the name to marketing. all these things, like otherwise it'll often not pick up that you have relevant work experience, even if you do, just because it doesn't, like the exact name isn't the same. So I'd be really careful about that. If you plug in your stuff into the link I sent, will be very, very helpful for
Oh,
this.
Kari couldn't find the link. Could you maybe copy it quick?
Yeah. One second. Sorry, I saw the question about cover letters. Personally, I think ChatGPT is really, really bad at writing cover letters and very good at revising them. So I use it like go through often, I'd say 3 or 4 iterations of a cover letter with ChatGPT being like, it's basically being like, you are whoever the role of the hiring manager is at this type of company. Imagine you're them. Here's the job description that you're hiring for. Here's a cover letter. What feedback would you have for this applicant? And I go through like a bunch of rounds of doing that. Or sorry, attach the job description and the cover letter, and then ask for feedback on the cover letter. And I usually go through like 3 or 4 rounds of doing that with ChatGPT, and I found it very, very good. In terms of writing it, I wouldn't do it. In my experience, I don't know, people are just saying they're very good at catching it, but people always claim that they're consistently able to catch it and they absolutely hate it. So I would avoid writing it a first draft from it. But if you give it a draft, it's pretty good at being like, change this part should be more specific, more direct here. Like, I think that type of feedback I found is pretty good at.
Sorry, just to pitch in for that. A lot of times I've heard recruiters that they say that, oh, we can just identify a cover letter in one glance, and we just know that it's updated, or it's taken help from ChatGPT. So what to do in that case? Like, obviously there are some terminologies, or in the way that ChatGPT uses to write sentences, it makes obvious sense. You can see the posts on LinkedIn that, yeah, they are obviously written by ChatGPT. So what to do in that case? And sometimes I give commands like, just write as a person, don't write as ChatGPT. I just write that. So it's kind of little maybe I would say challenging or stressful, or I just feel so tired doing so many updates.
That's very fair. What I will say is, like, most people will read the cover letter in 1 minute and glance over the key points and then never think about it again. And it's literally just getting it through that first process of getting to an interview that'll be looked at, and it'll only be looked at for a minute. So like, you don't have to worry too much about it. I think cover letters, the most important thing is keeping it directly short and to the point and clear. And if you do that and you directly reference all of your relevant stuff, you'll be fine. Worrying too much about like using fancy language and making a convincing argument for yourself and that kind of stuff just doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, because people don't spend enough time actually reading them.
And would I highlight or bold any keywords in cover letter? And same goes for resume.
I only bold numbers on a resume and never bold stuff on cover letters myself. I don't think it makes much of a difference. That's what I'd say. Like, it can help, maybe really small amounts, but I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Right. And would I put any pictures or anything to catch their eye?
Mine are literally blank Word documents.
Or like link to portfolio. I do not have those.
I would have that type of stuff. Definitely I would have.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Corey.
For sure. Okay, next, cover letters. So here's roughly the template. Again, like, thing I'm always optimizing for is clarity. That's all about just communicating directly and to the point. So basically, I start with a greeting. Like I mentioned before, like, if you can find the hiring manager's name, always spend 2 minutes scrolling through the company's LinkedIn. Even if you're wrong, like, take a guess, write a different name is better than writing just like dear to whom it may concern or dear whatever company. Like, try to find some person you can address it to, write their name. The first introduction paragraph is basically just like, I'm writing to apply for so-and-so job at your company. I'm excited about this for this reason, because either you are obsessed with what that company is doing, or that role specifically sounds like a really good opportunity for you to use certain skill and learn new skill, right? Like something like that. Why you're find like a short way of saying why you're excited about that role and that company and or that company. And then third, basically why you'd be valuable. So like what say are the biggest strengths that you have related to the job description that would make you really valuable, and like directly say that and directly say that you'd be valuable because of that. Like keep it, there's no reason to like use fancy things and like hide in the subtlety of saying what your skill is and assume that they can like know from your skill how to be useful. Like, no, just say it directly. I have this skill that would be useful for doing this at your company, doing this specific task that would make me valuable in this way, right? Like be very direct and to the point in terms of how you be valuable. And then it's just like your list of relevant experiences. This can be many things. It can be like hard skills. It could be like you learned how to program certain things that are similar to what you program in this role, or it can be as simple as this experience. Like it can be like random experiences related to like why you're passionate for climate or a specific niche within climate. If you have relevant experiences in that way, like it's totally good to like push, experience shows your passion as opposed to showing a hard skill. Same thing you can do, experience showing like soft skills of time management, leadership, or anything like that. I don't know, you in high school, you worked like 15 hours a week while doing high school. That's like a more valuable, impressive experience than like most internship programs, in my opinion. Like that just shows work ethic and ability to time manage more than most things. So it's okay to like, these experiences don't have to necessarily be like an internship or some work experience. It can be something that shows your passion, something that shows some of your soft skills, something that shows some of your personality, like whatever you think is sort of most relevant and fits whatever you think that they're most looking for. And for each one, just like, okay, overview what the position is, how it relates and would translate to you being effective in the specific job. And I personally also often will add like where something related, where that job can teach you something related to that skill set or something you can improve at, especially being like early career stuff. The more you can focus on like showing your eagerness and willingness to learn, the better. I think people choosing to hire someone our age are often optimizing for hiring someone young who's eager and wants to learn and is coachable. And so if you can focus and almost use that in a lot of ways and use that as part of your cover letter, I think I found that I did a lot better when actively leaning into that and admitting that like a big part of the reason they're probably hiring me is because I'll learn faster than most people. Yeah. So same thing there. Then the conclusion is basically literally like the same thing as your introductory paragraph, just reiterating specifically why you'd be valuable, why you find the company exciting, and what you hope to gain from the job. Like a lot of people, when they read this stuff, are going to kind of think of like, okay, why does this person want this job? And if you're able to directly be like, this is the skill set I want to learn in the process of what, I think that's a really good thing. Sometimes you won't have that, and it can be as simple as, no, okay, here's again why I'd be valuable, the things I'd be really good at related to this job, and also why I specifically want to work for this company doing that. So I'm reading the questions. Sweet. If I'm missing a question, just shout out. Again, yeah, like I said, file research the hiring manager, address them directly. Use a professional but personal tone. Like you don't need to use fancy language, fancy sentence structures. Just say it directly. I think a lot of the reasons people don't explain stuff directly is like a fear of sounding cocky and sounding overly confident. I think it's good to do that. Like it's very good to be confident and say that that you believe that you'd be valuable doing this stuff. Like I wouldn't use like toned passive language of like, I think I'd be good at doing this, like stuff like that I wouldn't do. Believe, I think is like fine. But in general, like say things directly. You don't need to try to add like passive other adjectives or adverbs around all the stuff. I think it's good to be direct, confident in the things in the way that you do, the things that you'd be valuable in, why you can prove that. Yeah, also I think the other thing I've seen a lot is people focus a lot on their technical skills and not a lot on the soft skills. Especially when people are hiring people our age, they're often hiring us for our soft skills. So it's good to spend some time acknowledging that. What are the best traits about you that you think would make you effective in that job? If you don't know what those are, I mean, ask your friends why they're friends with you, and they'll give you a pretty good reason of some of your strongest traits. Like it can be that simple. The reason people are friends with you are going to be somewhat similar to the reasons people like working with you, right? It's not that different of an experience. And so a lot of their strengths from one will be strengths in the other, and you should mention those the same as you should mention any technical skills. I'm happy to like at any point try to give you guys more feedback on this stuff. It's kind of tough to without specific cover letters. So I'm happy to like look over people and give them feedback on them at some point. But again, like with that, people I think stress a lot about cover letters. I wouldn't. They don't actually matter that much. It matters that you write one. And it looks like it's unique to that specific role, and it's actually what you talk about is relevant to that specific role, and you say why it's relevant and you make that clear. And everything else beyond that is kind of fluff. It doesn't really matter. So people overstress on like all of those details that aren't what matters. Just matter like if it clearly conveys what you want it to and shows that you know specifically about this job. Questions. Include career gaps. Yes and no. I mean, like if you have something specific that you were like working on during that time, otherwise, like no, I wouldn't. They'll ask you about them, and that's fine. But no, I wouldn't. I think people overblow how much people actually think about it, and people like take stock in it. They'll probably ask you in interviews. But even if you have like a one sentence answer of like, oh, I was applying for jobs, they're like, oh, okay, cool, makes sense.
Maybe that
Soft
question
skills
could
on a
also
resume,
be
just like
maybe
literally
asking
list them,
like,
like literally list
if you
them.
don't have the skills, do you also mention that? That's how I understood that question. But
Wait, sorry, what was that?
for the career gaps question, maybe the question could have been asking like, if you don't have certain skills, do you mention that you don't have them, or what's best?
I wouldn't, unless it's like something that's like really core to the job, in which case I would probably more mention it. Well, yeah, I would mention it. I don't know. So for me, I basically have never done that, but I have done it. Sometimes I've been applying for a job with like 4 to 5 years of experience, and I had like half a year of experience. And so I would directly address like, look, I know I don't have the 5 years of experience that you were expecting from this, comma, then I would explain why I think that number of years of experience is bullshit. It doesn't matter. Like not in those words, I would explain why I think I can do that same job even better. And in fact, it'd be more valuable than someone with like a lot of years of experience who has like not the same willingness to roll up their sleeves and do all of the work that needs to be done, even the boring work. So yeah, I mean, I think like if you have a counter argument, I would do it. If you have like a reason that why you don't think you could be successful despite that, you have a strong case there, then absolutely make it. If you don't, then I wouldn't mention it. Personally, I haven't added like quantifiable results and impacts in the cover letter. Occasionally I have, but usually I don't. I think usually you're not even getting that specific in the cover letter. You're more like, here's high level the things I've done at this company and how I could do something similar. If you have them, you think they're valuable, add it. But like, I don't think it's that important. Alvaro, yes, absolutely. Like either hiring manager is basically email is never going to be publicly available, but everyone knows that everyone's email is very easy to find publicly, and like they won't feel like it's an invasion of your privacy. Don't worry about that. Like it's pretty much always not going to be publicly available. You should always seek it out. Yeah. So here's my template for that. It's very, very simple. It also is very simple to a template we'll talk about next week for cold outreach, but it's basically just like, I usually send it for the morning after I send an application. But partly that's because I apply to jobs at like ridiculously late hours. And so I don't want to send 2 a.m. emails because that is probably a bad look. But it's basically as simple as, yeah, whatever the job title of the name is, application follow-up. And then, yeah, address them directly. As simple as I'm reaching out to apply to the role with this company, then explain like why you're excited about what that company's doing and why you think you're a fit. This is basically the same. Like this section here will basically be the exact same as your like summary section of a resume you submitted. It's basically the quick summary of like why you're interested, why you think you'd be a good fit. Again, this will be like 2 sentences usually, I would say, maybe 3. And then, yeah, basically say like, I'll briefly summarize my background and attach resume cover letter to this email, and would love to chance the interview. That's basically all you're asking for. You're just asking for them to consider you because you're really, really interested. If you have anything specific, like I said, if you like say it's asking for 5 years of experience and you don't have that, but you think you could still do the job, like it's definitely okay to directly mention that in this email. That might be a reason that you're not going to get past a recruiter screen or past a automated system. But the hiring manager themselves, you can make a compelling argument, they definitely will consider you. Yeah, and then basically it's just like a bulleted list of your relevant experience. I keep this 3 to 5 bullets, pretty short. First bullet should pretty much always be your education. Unless you some work experience you think is like genuinely more impactful than your education. For most of y'all, it'll be your education, just like, yep, I'm graduating at this date, or I'm studying this degree at this university. Yeah. Then the other bullet points are like other random things that are relevant to the role that you've done, whether it's a club, things you've been involved in, whether it's past internships, research experience, even specific classes that you've taken that are very relevant to this. Random things that show you're passionate about sustainability, random other impressive things about you. You were really good at archery in 3rd grade. I don't care. Whatever it is that you think shows that you're impressive and would make them want to consider you, just top 3 to 5 things. That also will probably be more or less the same for every job. Maybe it'll change a little bit if you have a bit of a range in terms of what kind of role you want to do. But for most of these, like the majority of this email, you're going to be writing this 2 or 3 sentences, which will probably be literally exactly the same as your like summary line on your resume. And then using the same bulleted list of experiences. So like writing these emails takes me like sub 5 minutes every time. So it doesn't take a lot of time, and it's like an easy way to make yourself stand out. Any questions about this? Sorry, I see the chat. Oh, I forget if I'll mention this later. Years of experience are bullshit. There's so many like jobs, mostly entry-level jobs, say 2+ years of experience. Absolutely ignore it. Like my rule is like, as a student, apply to like things up to 4 years of experience as the minimum requirement. People just list it because it's some recruiter being like, oh, I should hire this type of person for this and whatever. And it's just like a box that they check usually. Like ignore it. If you can make a compelling argument, they will absolutely consider you hiring you most of the time. It's worth applying regardless. You see very few jobs that openly, especially in climate, openly being like, we're hiring people with 0 years of experience, just because like you're going to get a lot of random applications if you say that. So yeah, don't be torn up by that. Apply anyways. Yeah. Any other questions?
I have a question, Corey. Do you reach out to more than one person at a time from each company?
I don't. I only do if I'm uncertain who the hiring manager is. I'm like, oh, it's one of these 3 people, and then I send each of them an email. And like, I basically use the same email with each of them. Like a little bit different. I maybe change like 1 or 2 words in my explanation of interest, but everything else I keep exactly the same. But only in that case. Otherwise, like I would just keep it to 1 person. But if you can't figure out who the hiring manager is, there's a couple options. Doesn't hurt. You can always just send these emails to like the recruiters. I usually don't, but can't hurt. There's 0 downside to doing it. No one's gonna not hire you. Like anyone who sees this email, it doesn't matter even if your email isn't that good. They are only gonna be more likely to hire you because of it. No one's ever gonna, like, it's never gonna decrease your chances of getting hired.
I've also heard you can guess emails too.
Yeah. Also, for finding emails, like I have a cold outreach template or document that explains all of the like tools you can use to do it. There's a bunch of Chrome extensions. My favorite free ones are these 3 websites, or I'll have like a pretty good number of free ones. You just plug in their LinkedIn. Oh, thanks, Dustin. Oh, I haven't even used that one, Kefir, but there's like 100 of these tools. So just keep using them. If they start making you pay, delete it and use another one. Okay. Follow up. This is basically like every week. If you haven't heard anything back from a company, either after applying or after interviewing, if you send one of these messages to someone in the company, your hiring manager, or like often I will basically just like, if I don't hear anything in a week, I will send a follow-up email to that first, like to this email I talked about in the last slide. Just send a follow-up email. Literally just reminding them. A lot of people like won't necessarily even open it the first time, but if they see you follow up, they're like, oh wow, this person really wants this job. Well, yeah, I'll give them a chance. And my follow, again, this will take you no time. Like my message is literally this, 3 sentences. You could be a little bit more clear between here about why, but you already said that in the above email. So like, if they see this, they'll probably read the first email. Just keep it straight to the point. Don't waste their time. Like, I don't know, 3 sentences. It'll take you no time. You can basically copy and paste this every single time. So yeah, definitely do this. It's crazy. Like I, after interviewing with a company, my first job in climate, I got because I sent one of these follow-up emails. They hadn't responded to me in like 2.5 weeks. And I was like, I wonder what happened there. And I sent them an email, and within 45 minutes, they offered me the job. So that was my first ever job in climate, with a really cool startup. So like this email will take like literally no time, and are absolutely worth it. So yeah, either like the way I do it, I have like a reminder app on my phone. I literally just, when I submit the first one, I like put follow up with that company reminder in my phone. A week later, it pings me if I haven't heard anything. I go send them an email. So that's how I keep track of it myself. But find some system to make sure you do it. Okay, now lastly, standing out. So this is basically, that was like the stuff, sending that like personalized hiring manager email and following up, and like personalizing resume cover letter. Like that's the stuff that can get you from like low effort to medium, can make you like, stand out more than some people. If you're a qualified applicant, that'll put you in like reasonable consideration, but you're still going to be competing against a lot of other people who are reasonably qualified. Like that's just sort of how it is. So now I'm going to talk about the ways you could really go above and beyond and get all the way into like these sort of like high effort tier that I'm talking about, and make yourself like an exceptional candidate. So in general, like the goal of doing this, there's like 4 main goals. The first one is just showing a ton of passion for the company and the role specifically. Like by the proxy of showing more effort, you show that you are more excited about it than other people. That means you're probably going to be more excited about it than other people once you're working in the job, and you'll probably put more effort in. Companies generally like people who put more effort in, care more. It's a very green flag for someone. So probably it is just the fact that it's hard is why it's useful. The fact that like these things are going to take a decent amount of time is the reason that it means a lot. Secondly, like you can show directly relevant skills, especially as a student. Like, a lot of times we won't have internship or work experience that's directly relevant. And so like if without that, it's sometimes a high risk for employers. It's like, oh, well, how do I know this person can actually do this type of stuff? And one way to, make them eliminate that worry is just by literally showing them a version that proves that you've done it. For some skill, it's relevant to the job. Also, yeah, it just shows a lot of high work ethic, and the fact that you like in your free time as a student still went above and beyond while applying for jobs shows like genuinely a really high work ethic. And the fact that you're willing to do that shows like a high level of proactivity. They always talk about in job descriptions, they always see like self-starter, which I didn't know meant anything, but it really just means you're a proactive person. And I feel like this is a good sign of that. And then like one of them, in some of the cases, you can obviously like do things that are genuinely helpful to them. Like you can like almost start doing the job before you even have it, and literally be valuable to them. The only thing that will make people really want to hire you is if you prove that you're valuable before you even start. Yeah, cool. 2 main methods for this. The first one is sort of a portfolio project. This one is basically like a one-time project that you can send to a bunch of companies. A lot of this, like it'll be able to showcase your specific talents and skill sets, showcase a bit of an effort, and also it's the benefit. Yeah, you can do this one time and you can send it to like 20 companies, and it shows more effort than most people have shown to 20 different companies at once with you just spending one time. And I'll go through a lot of different like examples of what this could be, what versions of this could look like. Some of them you guys already have in like school projects that you've done, and some of them will be completely new. Another benefit here is you can share it publicly, and so you can like get sort of like inbound stuff by being like, oh, here's this project I did. You can post that on LinkedIn, send that to random other people as a way to showcase what you've done. Then the other one is sort of the company specific approach, which is basically for that specific job or specific company, you try to do something useful for them. You send them some project relevant to their specific company. This like shows obviously specific effort for that one job because it's not something you could repurpose. And that shows a lot more effort because it will take a lot more fucking time. But also at the same time, like it can actually be something that's useful to them. It can be something that like actually gives them valuable information and show something that's specifically useful and something similar to what you might even do in that job. So it can, show more relevant skill sets in like a relevant context. But again, like you probably have to do one for free. Sometimes if you're clever enough and have a narrow enough niche, you might be able to do one of these and send it to 5 different companies and just change the names. So you can get clever with it and do this, but yeah, these are like the 2 sort of broad categories. Let me make sure there's no questions here. How do you determine which opportunities are worth applying to? I mean, be honest with yourself, look at your own resume. Like, hey, am I a good fit? Would I hire myself? I don't really have much of an answer besides that. It can be tough with ones that like have like more years of experience than you have, and deciding if like it's worth the effort. I would generally say it is, but like that genuinely can be tough. I think soft skills in general are general, so it's okay to be general. Like it feels general and it feels bullshitty. But I feel like it kind of isn't, so I would still do it. If you realize during this hiring process you're not a good fit, well, that's a fair realization. And now that could be like realize it, like you actually wouldn't want to do this job. Like you spend 5 hours doing this, you're like, wow, this sucks. And you're like, wow, maybe I shouldn't spend my career doing this. You know, like if that's a quick 5 hour test, if you're going to be miserable in a job, like that's probably a good learning to have.
It's not time wasted.
Yeah, at a career fair, I can answer that later. It's a really good question. It can be tough. It's a good question. Okay, so first, company specific. So there's like 3 main ways. The sort of easiest one is just showing your knowledge of their industry. Second one is just showing useful skills, like specific things they need in the job description, showing that you're good at that thing. And the last one can be like, you can even sort of like strategy approach it and sort of just describe how you would do part of the job. You don't even have to necessarily do it. You'd be like, here's how I'd approach this problem that I think might come up in the job. Yeah, so here's some random examples, right? So like for like a programming software engineer role, like industry knowledge, you can basically just like, okay, who's this company's 6 competitors, look through their websites, like come up with some analysis on like, okay, here's the main offerings of their product as opposed to the main feature offerings of our product as opposed to these 5 other companies, and come up with that type of analysis. If you can like show that to them, it's just a cool thing that's like, oh, maybe they didn't actually have great analysis. Maybe they didn't know one of those companies released one of those new features and it's a big part of their product and marketing is one of those features. Like can't hurt to do that analysis. And it just shows that you spent the time and now you know a decent amount about what the different type of people do and offer in that industry. You can do that same thing in most industries in terms of industry knowledge. It basically looks like a market research report that you can obviously change depending on the job. So if you're focusing on like an engineering job, you're going to focus probably a lot more on the tech than you would for like a business development role. But yeah, this is basically an easy way. You can write up a market report on all of the competitors in one niche and basically send this to all of the people as you're applying. Like just attach this to that hiring manager email. Be like, oh, by the way, here's this thing I put together. Here's this like document I put together analyzing this industry. And it shows, first of all, you know the industry, which proves your passion for their specific company, what they're doing, shows your knowledge and shows a lot more work ethic. And obviously might show that you're able to do that type of analysis. So all those things are good. Useful skills. This is very different depending on the industry. So a lot of different stuff that this could look like. For me, for example, like I'm interviewing right now for a job at a startup. That what I'd be doing is helping them manage their fundraise from VCs. And so I basically just like built together a list of like 100 VCs who are relevant for them and like sent it to them with also a list of like how I'd approach fundraising so I put both like a useful skills thing of like sending a bunch of relevant investors and like, okay, here's how I'd approach a fundraise and the general rough timeline that I'd aim for, and what like materials I would have them use. So like that was the random thing I did. I literally did on what day is it? Monday this week, and like sent that to them. We'll see if it works. I don't know yet, but like those are the random type of examples. And like here's a lot of examples, but you can sort of come up yourself what some of these things could look like. Next is portfolio projects. These are the more general things. It doesn't necessarily have to be for a specific company. It can more like similarly, you can do a market research without it being for a specific company. Like that one's nice because it's like you could make it company specific by changing which company is first and changing some of the labels, and send it to all of them and make like very similar ones off one portfolio project of market research. But there's like 100 other different types of portfolio projects that you could do. Here is a list of some of them we come up with, but there's just, I don't know, there's a massive range of some of them. A lot of them also you can use as an excuse to reach out to these people. So you can like hit them up being like, oh, I'm actually doing this project, researching your industry. Could I talk and learn more? So it could be like a cool way to have a interesting approach to network. And like for them, you can then post it, publish it online and give them free marketing. And it gives you a random excuse to talk to them and learn about them and show your interest for that industry, both in what you produce and in the process of talking to them. So like writing these market research reports, they can get to another even better level if you like actually go and talk to all those companies in the process of doing it too and interview them. Maybe you could release blog posts on it too or something like that. So all these different stuff, like it's just a bunch of other stuff you can add to your application that shows how passionate you are about this, because you guys are all either busy students or busy recent graduates. And the fact that you chose to spend your time doing this is genuinely impressive. Like, you know, your time is pretty scarce. And that's why like this stuff can be, these methods are a lot easier once you're a graduate and a lot tougher as a student. But at the same time, it's also why they're more impressive as a student if you're able to do it. Like someone sent me this type of stuff, like it shows a high level of work ethic, proactivity, and like just willingness to like go out and do stuff, which is like the most important things that I would personally factor in while hiring a student or a recent graduate. Yeah. Again, yeah, that's the same thing I sort of just talked about. You can use this as an excuse to reach out to people. Even now this applies if you've already applied, you can send it as part of your portfolio. This also applies the same if you haven't, they don't even have a job, they're not necessarily applying, you just want to reach out to them directly. We'll talk a lot more about that with the hidden job market next week. But this is going to be a really helpful tool as part of the hidden job market and accessing that. All right, questions? What stuff am I missing? Oh yeah, I couldn't think of anything for that. I've never done design work. Lucas knows I'm terrible at it. So yeah. Yeah, LinkedIn easy apply is, yeah, it's worth doing. But like if you, it's all you do, again, it's going to be like the number of the roles with like the most applicants ever. Okay, so now for the next 5 minutes, I want you guys basically to try to help each other with this. So I'm going to send you into breakout rooms with a very simple task. Literally just like, I think a lot of time, like we overcomplicate it when we're thinking about what these type of stuff could be. And so it can be helpful if we brainstorm for each other. So I will send y'all into breakout rooms to basically share, okay, from what we talked about last week in general, like what are the jobs you want to apply for? What is sort of the rough niches that you're interested in? And then from that, okay, brainstorm, maybe say for yourself, okay, what are some of the methods that you think that you're interested in? What are some of the like potential portfolio projects or potential company specific projects that you could come up with? And then for each other also, okay, what are the other ones that you didn't think of? What are some other possible options that the person might not be thinking of? So yeah, I want you to spend the next 5 minutes basically just going around one at a time and going through, okay, what is sort of that niche you're interested in? What are the type of roles? And then going through, brainstorm, try to help each other out, come up with some random examples of them. I know we're over time, so I have like 2 more minutes. I had a couple slides on like interview tips. Most of it is like stuff I'm sure most of you guys already know. I will send over the slide deck email to all of you guys after, so you guys can just look over the slides yourself. They're pretty self-explanatory. The only thing I think is like somewhat different is like just some example questions I have that are like helpful questions. I think good questions to ask in interviews that like I have found have been successful, people respond to well and get a good impression from. And also same thing, just like making sure you follow up with these people post interviews. It makes a big difference, especially because a lot of time people interview you and then they'll have a top candidate and it's very clear that candidate then will no longer be a fit for the job. But if you're the only person that emails you, you will be the person they got to. And that'll happen with like 80% of jobs. Like that's a normal part of the process. And so if you send that follow-up email, you'll be the first person they think of when they're like, okay, shit, who's like our go-to person now? If you've already interviewed them and you follow up, it'll probably be you. So yeah, I will send out this stuff so you guys can look through that yourself. Only thing I want to say basically is next week, I honestly personally regret it. I wish I did next week's talk before this because I think it's the most important. Like after all of the advice I've just given you on how to stand out in applying for jobs, my next week is going to be why applying to job postings is probably not the most effective way of finding a job. And the best way, honestly, is like creating a job yourself. Or basically, yeah, doing that through like the hidden job market. I think that's like in general, we found is a lot more jobs are going to be found that way. You just have such a better chance than finding actually entry level jobs in climate. And because they're entry level, like people will, if they like really like you and think you'd be valuable to them, like they will just hire you. Now, same time, like in all of that process, having these type of projects and following up and sending these emails at the same time are skills that are like going to be helpful while you're interviewing and while you're applying for those jobs, whether they're posted jobs or not. But I think the hidden job market is genuinely the most important one. So like, even if you can't come next week, like watch the recording, really focus on that part. I think it's like, if you spend your time networking and doing cold outreach and trying to meet a bunch of different cool companies that are in whatever niche you're in, that's going to give you by far the best chance of being successful. And is also just like honestly a lot more fun than applying to hundreds of soulless application jobs and not hearing back. So like that's more or less what we're going to go over, and it's going to focus a lot around like networking, cold outreach, which often has sort of have like bad reputations, and a lot of people I know are scared of it first, but I promise it's not scary. And is like by far the most valuable thing and the like highest, most ROI time you'll spend in your entire like career stuff. So that's next week. Yeah, feel free to ever reach out if there's other ways I can help in the meantime. I have office hours, I think Friday afternoon, I think it's 3 Eastern, but I forget. So I'm happy to answer questions then. And yeah, that's it. Otherwise, feel free, you can hang out. I'll be around if you guys want to ask other questions now, but otherwise I've taken up way too much of your guys' Wednesday evening. So I apologize. And thank you guys all for joining and, participating genuinely. And I appreciate it. There was so many questions today. I always love to see it.